Good morning, dear viewers. And in the sweltering heat of Delhi and the most of the part of plains in India, it's of course raining a few places. But welcome once again, Namaskar. And we are going to take you to the hills today because it's getting really, really uncomfortable down, isn't it? So we need to go. We reminded you last time when we were closing up on Himachal that we're going to take you trekking. So I hope you've got your boots and I hope you've got your hat, and we must make sure you get the sunscreen too, because the sun can actually be pretty direct on your skin there. I'm not going to talk too much about the mighty Himalayas because it's better to see them and you have to feel them, right? And taking us trekking today are two classmates. They were classmates in IIT Roorkee, and they finished with their engineering, and they do other things for their bread and butter. But that has not daunted or stopped them from trekking in the Himalayas, which is their passion. And Anupam is a nature lover. He's a keen photographer and a trekker. When not in the Himalayas doing landscapes, he does shoot in the street life of the cities of India. How wonderful that must be. Today, we are not going to focus on that, but Anupam, I hope you're going to talk a little bit about all those colors and the sounds and the smells of our incredible country. Well, Anupam, after finishing with his engineering at IIT Roorkee, received his postgraduate from IIT Delhi, and then he went on to Utrecht in Netherlands to study more, but did not forget his love for the mighty Himalayas. He's currently based in Gurgaon, and as he says, he does his bread and butter work from there, but he keeps his life more interesting by doing the treks. Parag, in the meantime, has also been after doing his IIT Roorkee engineering, went on to the IIMs at Ahmedabad, and is currently, he has made a little bit more of a profession out of his love for travel, and he owns the Bodhi One Resort in Madhya Pradesh. And we'll of course be taking you once again to Madhya Pradesh after a few weeks. So you can see the Tiger Reserve once again there. And he also is part of the Masai Mara Travel Company in Kenya. And we'll see how we can show you that too, to remind ourselves that how many things we actually share with the Masai Mara part of the world. But he has a bucket list travel company, and he does a lot of other things, which I'm going to leave him to tell you about. So today, let's go trekking, viewers. And Anupam, the web screen is all yours. Enjoy the trek, viewers.
Thanks for the lovely introduction, Rupinder. Himalayan treks are truly magical. They allow us to experience nature up close at a pace of our choice. There's a Bhutian song which I translated into English here. High are the mountains, Shiva lives in them. This is my homeland. It is more beautiful than heaven. This song truly encapsulates the essence of Himalayas. They are the loftiest mountains in the world, with more than 100 peaks which are greater than 7,000 meters in height. 9 out of the 10 highest mountains in the world are in the Himalayas. Mountains are steeped in mythology in India. There are stories around every rock, stream, lake, and peak that you can find if you dig deep enough. There is pristine natural beauty that you will find everywhere that you go. It is truly, truly heaven on earth. You'll see scintillating waterfalls, and if you're lucky enough, you might catch a rainbow in the waterfall. You'll find amazing, spectacular sunsets. And the colors, oh my God, the colors, in the fall, in the spring, they just catch your eye, make you wonder. The people here live a very tough life, but they are some of the happiest I've ever seen, or you will ever see. Not surprisingly, even the animals are extremely welcoming and friendly. And this is especially for the dog lovers. One is almost certain to find a dog that will befriend you on a trail and walk you the entire time. And of course, Parag, being a great dog lover, you can see him trying his hand out or his lips out to every dog that he finds on the trail. Himalayan treks can only be experienced. They cannot really be truly described. They are where we trekkers truly come alive. And it's a lovely quote by Bill Aitken in his book, Nana Devi Affair. And that's one of the reasons why we have to go back. We have no choice. Every year, we need to go back to experience the same love affairs. But before we jump into some specific Himalayan treks, let us just talk a little bit about how to undertake a trek, because Himalayan treks are not to be taken lightly. Before you choose a trek, you have to understand the seasons. There are broadly 4 seasons. There's the summer, which is April to June, nice time to visit the Himalayas. There is the monsoon season between July to September. A little tricky because huge showers can lead to landslides and cloudbursts and difficult weather conditions. So a little tricky, so normally avoidable, but there's some areas or some treks which are done only in the monsoons. Then of course there's the autumn, October to November, probably December kind of time frame, October, November, where the land starts turning brown due to the cold, but you get lovely views because the air is cleared out after the monsoons. And then there's the winter, which is December to January or February, where you do winter treks, which are normally snow and ice treks. Difficulty levels, you have to be prepared for either easy, moderate, or difficult category of trek, depending on your fitness levels. You choose a trek which works for you. If you're reasonably fit, you can undertake a moderate trek. If you're just a normal walker during the day, you can take an easy trek. You have to really get yourself to speed if you want to undertake a difficult trek. You can do treks self-guided or take a guide. We normally recommend a guide, a local guide, normally very friendly, supportive, and trustworthy people in the hills. Recommend taking a local guide. We can find ratings and reviews on the web. Preparing for the trek, it's important to get your fitness up to speed. Spend a few months before the trek, plan it out, get the right gear or equipment or clothing, whatever you need, depending on the season and the area that you're going for. But despite all the preparations, be prepared for the unforeseen. While on the trail, we have a principle: leave only footprints behind. While your guide or tour operator or trek operator will make sure that the campsite garbage is something which is taken care of, they are well trained to do that. Please do not, as an individual, litter while on the trail. This is something very close to our hearts as trekkers. We actually clean up after other people sometimes and bring back all the litter that we find on the trails. Very important, survive to tell the trail. Despite nature being your friend, it can also be extremely dangerous because it is wilderness after all. You can have, you might find a berry which looks very appealing. It might be poisonous. You might have a poisonous mushroom that you pick up on the way. So don't eat from the trail. You don't really know those plants and flora. Same thing about fauna. There can be big animals like leopards or bears out there. There can be small animals like hogs. Hogs can be big also. But tiny animals or like insects like millipedes or scorpions. So be careful. You are in wilderness. You're not out in a walk in the park. So be careful. Do what the guide tells you to do. Finding your way, again, important. Do what your guide tells you to do. Keep to the trails. Don't try to create your own paths. No, don't take shortcuts unless the guide asks you to do that. If you're doing snow and ice treks, make sure you understand the basic principles. Do not just think that it's nice, fluffy snow. It can be extremely dangerous. The slopes can be dangerous and can cause mishaps when you're not careful. There's something called AMS, acute mountain sickness, which happens if you ascend beyond typically about 10,000 feet or 3,000 meters very quickly. It is basically because of lack of oxygen. You tend to feel nauseated, vomiting, headache, breathlessness kind of feelings. If you feel any of those symptoms, talk to your guide. He'll typically bring you back quickly or provide you oxygen. These are solvable problems as long as you watch out for them. Again, I can't emphasize enough. Make sure you are following what your guide tells you. He's your captain, he's your guide, he's your savior in times of stress. Make friends with him or her and make sure that you come back safe and sound. Okay, experiences that we have uh, you know, gone through as trekkers, like to share some of those. There are stories. If you do your treks, you will have stories that you can tell your grandchildren and enjoy them by a fireside later. I'm starting with Kuari Pass. It is one of the most beautiful treks I've ever done. Personally, for me, the magic was enhanced further because my wife was there to share the experience. Encourage your spouse to trek with you. It makes for a wonderful shared, memorable experience. A little bit about the trek. How do you get there? The trek basically starts from a place called Joshimath, which is next to a skiing place for the winters called Oli. You get there from Delhi by either a car, bus, or train, taken to Haridwar, and then you drive up to Joshimath or Oli. It takes about a day to drive from Haridwar to Oli. You start the trek from Oli, you walk up to Gursan Bugyal. Bugyal's alpine meadows, and then you just walk along the ridges all the way till you reach Tapovan village, come down to Tapovan village, and then you drive back to Haridwar. I'll talk about this a little later. The best time to do this trek is between March and May for the summer trek and September to December for a winter trek. It can be categorized from easy to moderate depending on the season when you do it. It takes about 8 days ex Haridwar. That's me on the first camping site, which is Gursan Bugyal. It's a lovely campsite. The oak forest surrounding the Bugyal. You can see alpine tents on the left-hand side, which is where we were living for the night. The conical tent is the kitchen tent. The green tent is a mess tent, eating, and the two tents on the right-hand side are toilet tents. So you can get well provisioned for treks as well. This is a nice trek that we planned out. That day when we reached up, we went up to the top of the Bugyal, but we saw the weather turning. So, the guide told us to quickly get back because it was going to start to rain. And that's something which happens off and on in the Himalayas. You have to be prepared for the unforeseen. Next morning was amazing. The weather cleared up and it was bright and brilliant. And both of us, me and my wife, were very happy, coming out of the tents. This is what is called an alpine tent. It is made of nylon. It's got two layers. The external layer is called the fly sheet, and the internal layer is a thinner material. Allows you to keep out the weather in terms of wind, snow, or even insects. Does not keep out the cold though. It still gets very cold at night. The next day when we started out, the views are instantly fantastic. What you see here are two 6,000 meter high mountains. The mountain on the right hand side is called Hathi Parvat because it looks like the head of an elephant. Hathi means elephant. And the one on the left is called Ghodi Parvat because the twin small peaks on the left are look like ears of a horse. So that's why it's called Ghodi Parvat. Beautiful mountains that accompany you throughout the trek. As we hiked up further, the valley starts opening up and you start seeing Dronagiri, which is a 7,000 peak mountain, and it's a beautiful view. And lo and behold, you're in front of the Nanda Devi. Nanda Devi is one of the most beautiful mountains of the country, if not the world. It is the second highest mountain in India after Kanchenjunga. It is revered throughout Garhwal and Kumaon as a goddess. If you look carefully, it does look like an old lady with a shawl, with her feet out. She is considered Shakti of Rudra, the fiery form of Shiva. You have to simply stand in front of Nanda Devi and just feel its magnetic power. The scale and vastness of nature and our own individual minuteness is mind-numbing in the presence of such a spectacle. To give you a general sense, from where my wife is standing on the Bugyal, the top of the mountain is 4 kilometers high. So the scale and a sense of what you're viewing is very difficult to capture on camera. You just have to experience it and you have to be there. You have to do one of these Himalayan treks. after a few hours of walk along the Bugyals, we started to descend to Tali Forest Camp. You can see the Duranagiri on the left hand side and Nanda Devi on the right hand side, and that's me coming down the hillside. The hillside is steep, a little risky at some points, but broadly okay. But before we hit the camp, we found a lovely alpine lake. These are gems that you find on the way. The surprising places that you can sit and rest and enjoy nature. When we reached the forest camp, it was nice, and it was middle of a oak forest again. A nice place to rest after a whole day's hike. We had our food and went to sleep, and we had a very interesting, eventful night. So it was midnight, everybody was asleep, and suddenly I heard a noise outside the tent. It felt like and heard something like sniffing around the tent. I actually got a little scared. I woke up my wife and put on a torch, and I was waving the torch in the direction of where the sound was coming from, because I anticipated I heard animal sniffing around. And we were wondering, is it a bear? Is it a leopard? What is this outside? And we started whispering across to the other members of the team in the tents. These are nylon tents, very thin. You can just talk across the tents at night. And of course, they don't offer any protection against a wild animal. And we kept whispering, waving torches. Everybody was waving torches. And my wife was wondering, will we survive the night? What will happen to our kid? We left back home, very worried. And eventually, the noise finished, and we went back to sleep. So the next morning, we were at breakfast table, and we were wondering, what was it? What was it? And the guide strolled up, and he told them about the story, and he said, that was a khachar that had actually, gone off around your tents, and he was browsing around your tents, and we had a good laugh. I wasn't very sure whether we should be relieved or disappointed, but we actually thought it was a wild animal. Anyway, good fun. We had a good laugh and then moved on. Next day, this photo is taken when we're climbing up to Kulara top. That little gentleman there is Khan Singh, a very good friend now, a local guide, amazing human being, very friendly, and one of the fittest men I've seen ever in my life. He's also a champion kayaker, by the way. On the back side now of the team, you can see the Kulara top, and the vista behind is pretty interesting, because the green patch behind is the Tali forest, which is where we had camped the night before. And the ridge along the mountain behind is what we have trekked the day before. So that is how you can see that it's a lovely ridge walk. This trek is one of the most beautiful in the world. And of course, in the middle of autumn colors, which are golden meadows, make for beautiful photographs. And as we walk along the ridge, we see mountains on both sides. It's almost a 360-degree view. And when we start descending from there to Kulara campsite, you see rolling meadows. And rolling up to the hill peak, which you can sort of cut off in the photograph on the left-hand side top, that's called the Pangarchula. That's a local peak. But we didn't go there this day. We actually went to the edge of this and then descended the valley for the trek, for the night. The interesting thing is that this is a standard maneuver for avoiding high altitude sickness. You trek high and camp low. That actually gives you your body time to acclimatize. This is Parag and his wife. The next day, when we went peaking to the mini Pangarchula peak, as you can see, they're extremely happy because you can see the views behind them. The Hathi and Ghori Parvats, on the right hand side of Parag. Beautiful views from here. That's it. Lovely Kuari Pass trek, highly recommended. Parag, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Anupam. I think
so Parag, before you speak, I just want to remind the viewers a couple of things. One, of course, a correction that Parag reminded me that Bodhi one is in Tadoba and Tadoba is in Maharashtra and not Madhya Pradesh. So viewers, a small correction there. And also, Anupam mentioned about stories that you should be telling grandchildren. Well, don't go away before you hear one of the best stories that's coming your way right at the end. And both the panelists have kept me also in dark about it when they said, to see what secrets the snow-clad mountains hold, stand by for the final section on Roopkund. It hides an intriguing and unsolved mystery of our times. Now, what could that be? I don't know which of you is going to tell us that, but let's wait for it. Yeah, Parag, all yours.
Well, so both Anupam and I have experienced it, but I will talk about that. But thank you, Rupinder. I think now let us move on to Brahmatal. So this is another trek that I did with Anupam and another college friend. All of us felt that we should do something in the winters. We did this in January. Brahmatal is named after God Brahma, which is basically to say that he meditated here and therefore the name came. And the access to this is through Lohajang, which is a base camp. And the story here is that goddess Parvati had a fight with Lohasur and killed him. And that is why the name Lohajang has come, which means fight. Jang means to fight with the demon Lohasur. So you will find, like Anupam mentioned, that there are stories that all of them have. The approach to this is through Delhi as the closest airport, via Kathgodam, and then the trek starts with a camping at Bekaltal. It's an easy trek. It is a slow trek, but I would recommend that for people who are really looking for a thrilling experience. A lot of different kinds of trees, different kind of meadows. You can do it in a different season, but in the snow period, it is beautiful with the mountains completely wrapped up in a blanket of snow, and you walk through knee-deep snow in most places. It is not very difficult, and your families and children can do this. And we'll move on. This is the view that greeted us in the first evening at Lohajang, which is a small village where we spent the night and were thrilled by the views. Now, this is just to show, that we are maybe at around 7,000 feet, but even there you get wonderful views. And don't miss the dog on the right. We'll have more to talk about the dog later on. Anupam? Next slide. Yeah. So this is a lake in Bekaltal. This is one of the two lakes that we saw on the trek. To me, this was one of the first experiences in seeing so much of beauty with the trees around the lake. It was almost like a black and white postcard. We spent a lot of time here, took a large number of photos, and just felt that is there some way that we can take this back forever with us in terms of a memory. So the pictures are there, but basically we just have to go back again if you want to do more. Next slide. There are just some views. There is, in some cases, there is firewood which is allowed to be taken for a bonfire. So you can see our guide pulling this out, which is very rare during the winter months, but he did manage to do something, and we enjoyed a nice bonfire at night around the campsite. This is, going up from Bekaltal towards Brahmatal. We had, a lovely view of, the Roopkund side. Actually, it is there across the valley, and the snow was now getting to be much thicker and deeper. And along the ridge line, with clouds in the sky, we're waiting for the rain, which didn't come, thankfully. But you have to be prepared for that. I mean, there are experiences where you'll get caught in rain. You can't escape them, but be prepared. Have your waterproof ready. But it's still a lovely feeling. Next. More views, admiring the frozen world in front of us. We can see for kilometers and kilometers, many miles. You just don't know where it ends, but it's just a white and gray. We are probably the only two colors that you can see in that area for a long, long distance. This is a slide to show we're up from Brahmatal, the lake. It's -5 degrees at that point in time. There is a story that I want to talk about the night temperature, which was -10, and we were sleeping in our tents. And I had a healthy mustache that time, not the French beard that you can see right now, maybe. Uh, and I woke up at night with the pillow entirely wet, and I was worried. I said, "Oh my goodness, I caught a cold, and that's the end of my trek. I mean, I cannot, move around now." But I was perfectly fine. I mean, I couldn't feel a sneeze or anything coming. It took me one night to realize that it was so cold inside the tent that every time I took a breath, my the moisture from my nose would freeze on my mustache, and when I inhaled, it would melt. And that was a cycle of ice and water, which was precipitated by my mustache, and it wet everything around my head. Of course, the reason why Anupam and my other friend Vineet, they could feel it was they were clean shaven. So just a lesson that you learned, that it's good to have less hair on a trek when you're going to have temperatures below -10, -5 or -10.
But I just a question that's coming in that how do we get there? Can you just mention the logistics?
Yeah, this is why Lohajang, I mentioned, you have to take a train from Delhi. Anupam can go back to this. I mentioned this. And from there, then you drive. It's almost a 7 or 8 hour drive. I don't remember the exact distance, but maybe around 300. Anupam, if you're there, you could confirm that. And then you can stay for the night in Lohajang and start the trek from there. So Delhi to Kathgodam by train, and then you drive. Yes, Anupam, next slide, please. So this is the deep snow that we are trekking through. You can see that it is going almost up to your knees. Some new experiences here for all of us. We had to wear, what are called gaiters over our shoes to prevent the snow and ice from getting in. One of the worst things that can ever happen to you on a trek is to have snow getting inside your boot and then melting by the heat of your foot, and then your trek is done. I mean, you can't walk with wet feet and wet socks. So these gaiters prevent the snow and ice from getting in and keep you safe. So small things, but very important. Next. A tough climb. We are now headed towards the peak at that point in time. Anupam, next. You can now see that the Trishul mountain is showing its face. It's starting to come out. And finally, the top of Brahmatal. I don't have words to explain the feeling that all of us had. The three of us, we just sat there in awe, just looking. We didn't even talk. We didn't look at each other. We just kept looking at the mountains. This is a feeling which I can tell you'll only get if you go there. So once the webinar is over, once we are done with this madness of this little virus creating trouble for all of us, creating havoc, please talk to the nearest tour operator, talk to one of us, talk to somebody who will guide you, but go and do this. There's no other way I can explain the beauty and the magnificence of the mountains around you. Next. Just a few shots which shows how happy we are. We did everything that we could to make ourselves more happy for the camera. In fact, there is a video. I don't know if the video is going to work, but Anupam, can you try loading that? We were like kids. We were playing in the snow. Short of throwing snowballs, we were doing everything else. This is Anupam telling us about the peaks, but I can't hear the sound. I don't know the viewers can. If somebody could check. These are our guides, Nitin and Mahinder Bhai. That's Vineet, our third friend from engineering college. So just to also give you an idea, while there was still just 3 of us, we still had 4 guides with us. One key guide, the local person who knew it, one person who was looking after our safety and security, and then the cook and the helper. Let me move on. Some more beautiful views. Like I said, go there. There is no other way to tell you how lovely they are. Next. Regretfully, we started walking back, but yes, we had to get back home. This is just a view of the day we went to the Brahmatal top. And these have also been our friends on most of the journey. I mean, quietly they went about their way. I don't know if there's a shot that Anupam had shared earlier of one of these rolling around and enjoying himself in the snow. They take all the opportunity that they get to enjoy their hike as well. Some more magical blue hills, the blue mountains, different times of the day, different colors. It's lovely. Anupam, over to you now for Harki-Doon.
Okay, thanks, Parag. So we'll share a slightly different experience of a trek called Harki-Doon. It's a lovely trek, but it became a test of character for the team as a whole as well as the individuals doing the trek. So Harki-Doon actually means the valley of the gods. I'll explain that a little later during the presentation. It starts from a place called Taluka. The way you get there is you first get to Dehradun from Delhi. You can take a car, bus, train, or flight to get to Dehradun. From Dehradun, you drive to Taluka via Mussoorie, and you can stay in Taluka and start the trek from there. And you do the hike, and the trek brings you back to Taluka, and then you drive back to Dehradun. Okay, as you can see, it is a larger team this time, varied age groups. The oldest was approaching 50, and the youngest was my son, who's in the red jacket, who had just turned 14. So varied backgrounds, experience levels in terms of trekking as well. This photo was taken just as we were starting off, but this was after a very tough night, very eventful night. My son had got food poisoning and a severe stomach upset during the night. He was exhausted and weak before even the trek had started. So, as I mentioned earlier, fitness is critical to trekking. If you're unfit, the difficulty level for you actually becomes much, much higher. So 2 of us, my son and I, considered dropping out of the trek, but the team was, a close set of friends, very supportive. They stuck on, and they said, we'll wait. We waited a few hours, which is a no-no in trekking terms, because normally you start off on right points in time. You do not, change your schedule. You start off at least in the right point in time because you don't know when you'll reach. Surprisingly, after a couple of hours, my son decided that he was willing to take a shot at it, and he started. So that's when we took this photograph. So from Taluka to Seema, it's a mix of forests and open areas. We were rewarded with some lovely views. It was December. We were doing this trek in December, so it was actually very cold. And you can see a village across the valley, which is called Osla. It's a beautiful village. It looks like it's hanging off the cliffs from clinging to the sides. The photo on the left here actually shows a path that we have to walk, where a stream has actually overflowed and got frozen. So navigating this was extremely tough because if you slip on this, you're obviously going to break something. Not very easy. This hike from Taluka to Sima, the place that we are supposed to reach for the night, was 14 kilometers. We are a very supportive team. My son made it, chugging along only on lemonade. The life throws lemons at you, you drink your lemonade. The next day, my son was feeling much better and he set off again. You can see here again a completely frozen stream. The only way to cross it was walking across a lot. My son seems to be doing it very casually with one hand in the pocket, but actually this is a little risky maneuver. Has to be done very carefully. As we started climbing up, we reached heights where the snow mountains opened up and we came into Bhojpatra clusters. Bhojpatra, also known as the technical term is Himalayan birch. The bark of the tree is white in color and it comes off in large portions, large one-piece portions. And it's been used by ancient sages for writing text. And this is an example photo I took off the net of ancient text written on Bhojpatra. Beautiful trees. And as we climbed up, we saw more of these Bhojpatra clusters. But I actually don't have too many photographs of this day because another very interesting thing happened. One of the things that happens on a trekking trail is that people walk at different paces. So you get spread across along a trail. Some people will walk faster, some people will be slower, bringing up behind. My son was a little weak from the day before, so you're walking a little slower, we're bringing up the rear. Towards the end of the day, when we caught up with the people who are taking a break, who were in the front of us, who were leading the front, we realized that 2 trekkers had gone missing. Then my son remembered that he had seen 2 people who he had thought were local villagers way below, few hundred meters way below us, trekking on a different path. And then we realized that those 2 guys had gone off on a different route, which would take them to the bottom of the valley instead of the Har Ki Doon, which is actually a big climb ahead of us. So our guide turned back. He went looking, because my son had seen them in some place, we knew exactly which trail they were on. So our guide went quickly down to get them back, while we moved on slowly towards our destination, which was Har Ki Doon. Thankfully, the guide was an amazing guy. He ran down to the people and caught up with them before they could get it even further away, and he brought them back safely. The next morning, we were all very happy about being together, made it as a team, faced a lot of challenges of different types, and we deserved the celebration at the top. Me and my son prayed to the local deity. Local deities are very important for hill people, but they are equally important to us trekkers. Nature provides a safe passage and takes care of us and our well-being, and in turn, we are grateful to nature. Then we descended into the Valley of the Gods, Har Ki Doon. This is the origin of a river called Thamsa. The mountain you see behind, in front in the picture, is called Swarg Rohini. It is a beautiful mountain. It's actually a massive, it's got 3 peaks, 1, 2, and 3. The one that you see in front is called Swarg Rohini 1, and on the left-hand side. It's got an amazing mythology we'd like to relate here. It's the story of Yudhishthir, one of the Pandavas. The legend has it that after the war of Mahabharata was won, the Pandavas went through a period of self-assessment. What have they actually won for the war? What was it all about? And they came to the Himalayas. As they walked about the Himalayas, one by one, each of them actually passed away. And Yudhishthir was the only one who was left. Yudhishthir was supposed to be the most virtuous one. And he approached the gates of heaven through Swarg Rohini. Swarg Rohini means the gateway to heaven. As he approached the gates, as he walked towards the gate, a dog who met him and started escorting him along the way. When he was about to enter the gate, he actually put a condition for entering heaven. He said that all my brothers have left me along the way. Only this dog has accompanied me all this way, all this through this difficult path. So this dog should also be allowed to enter heaven. At this, the dog turned out to be Dharmaraj, who was very pleased with Yudhishthira's dharma, and he allowed Yudhishthira to enter heaven with his humanly body. So that is the story of Swargrohini. The next day, we started descending, and as we bid goodbye to the beautiful mountains, Swargrohini was still peeking from and waving to us from behind the mountains. The descent found us crossing frozen streams and waterfalls, beautiful experiences by themselves. And we descended back into the big valley, leading back to the village Osla that I had spoken about earlier. Osla turned out to be a very interesting place as well. It's a village where they have a temple to Duryodhan. Duryodhan was the king of Kauravas. And the legend has it that when Duryodhan was killed, the people of this region actually wept so much that their tears created a river called Tamas. Tamas is now known as Tons. Along the way, you will find village kids, and the best way to get smiles on the face is to share chocolates and sweets, which we always carry with us. And you will be rewarded with amazing smiles. In the end, we came back to Taluka and got ready for the drive back. And we were all very happy and refreshed after an amazing trek. So that was Harki Dun trek. Now I'm going to take you to a very different journey, a very different experience in a region of India called Ladakh. This was a different experience because in this case, we were actually trekking for a purpose. Here's the story behind it. One of my son's school teachers had started an NGO and was working in remote villages of Ladakh. She encouraged us to actually do treks in Ladakh and visit some of these schools. My son came up with the idea that he could actually share his passion for science by teaching science using simple experiments that they could learn while we visited these schools and did the trek. Turned out to be a great idea. Before getting to the trek itself, Photokser is a very picturesque village in Ladakh. It is part of, it lies on a trek trail, which is called the Great Zanskar Trek. This region of Ladakh is not accessible at all for 6 months every year because of high snows and avalanches. The best time for doing this trek is from June to October. That's when the passes are open. This is a homestay trek, which is also an extremely different experience. You actually get to live with local villagers, experience how they live, share their food, and make friends with them. And it supports the local economy too. It's a wonderful way to trek. So the way to get here is you fly into Leh from Delhi. Leh is the capital of Ladakh. You have to take a day at least to acclimatize because Leh itself is more than 3,000 meters. So one day of doing nothing. And then you can start off. You drive on the Leh-Kargil road and take a diversion to a village called Vanla. Then you can trek all the way to Photokser and then come back to Vanla and the same way back. The flight into Leh is also magical because you actually see the high Himalayas. The Ladakh plateau is behind the high Himalayas, and that is the reason why it becomes a desert. So Ladakh is what is known as a Himalayan desert. It is actually a plateau which is all above 3,000 meters. The high Himalayas actually create a rain shadow, do not allow the monsoon clouds to reach Ladakh, and therefore it's a desert. Except where there are rivers, which are essentially runoffs from snow melts. It does snow very heavily during the winters. And along the rivers, you will see amazing greenery or along any water courses. They're like oases in the desert. So this is a picture which is taken when you're walking along the Yapola River. The greenery behind is because there's a Yapola River which is passing behind us as you started trekking towards Vanla, towards Hanupata, the next village where you stopped. You go through an amazing gorge of the Yapola River. There are two pictures. Left hand side shows the wall of the gorge. It's a steep rock face which is about 1,000 meters high. On the right hand side picture, you can see the river itself on the left, on the bottom, and then the gorge, rising up from above it. This is the view just short of the Silsila Pass. A beautiful view of Ladakh, where you get these rolling mountains which are deserts topped by snow-capped peaks and blue skies. This is the Silsila Pass, which is almost at 5,000 meters, which is a very high altitude for a trek. The photo on the left-hand side top inset is with Stanzin, a guide for the trek, and now a friend for all these years. We keep in touch, talk almost every other month. We descended from this pass again to amazing views. This is one of the passes, by the way, which is unpassable for about 6 months of a year. And on these slopes, we found Himalayan marmots. These are pretty cute-looking animals, furry animals, very shy. If you approach them, they'll get back into their burrows. They are large, by the way. These are the largest marmots in the world. They're the size of a cat, which you can't visualize here. This is quite big. And as we descended, we saw quite a glimpse of Photosar. That's the village on the lower bottom side of the screen that you see. Nestling below huge mountains, there is an amazing view. We looked back to look at how and where we had come from, and this is the view that we saw. We have come, the Silsila Pass lies to the right of these mountains. We have come from there, descended, and come down along the river to Photosar. And that's a stupa, Buddhist stupa on the left-hand side in the green fields. That's another view from the village homestead that we are staying in. This is a view from a window, imagine. The painted mountains of Ladakh are actually called painted mountains because of the different colors of the mud, as well as the shadows of the clouds that keep rolling past, make for amazing photographs.
Anupam, I hope by taking us to Ladakh, you're not going to forget telling the secret of Roopkund.
Yes, I will quickly finish this and we'll come to Roopkund.
Okay, great. No, because we are waiting with bated breath. What happened in Roopkund?
Sure. School, Ladakhi school. Yes, I understand, absolutely. So that's a Ladakhi school that we actually went to. My son, shared, experiments, science experiments there. It was a lovely experience with interaction with the kids there. And, we had a very happy teacher who got a new tool for teaching. And on the way back, we found that houses were being built made of local bricks and mud bricks. Very quickly, you can see a stream in this picture and a canal which has been made. The meandering place of the canal, creating an oasis for grazing and planting trees. And you can actually get greenery in the desert by efforts. So this is the final slide. Om Mani Padme Hum is a Tibetan prayer which you will find all over Ladakh. Parag, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Anupam. I think there is a lot of curiosity about Roopkund. So let me tell you that this was my first trek. Anupam coaxed me into it. He didn't tell me what to expect. So I'm not going to tell you either what to expect. You cannot, of course, relive the journey, which by itself was physically daunting, thrilling. I mean, you're climbing almost at 45, 50 degrees at some points to reach the first destination. But what we discovered at the end of it is a mystery which has to be told. Anupam, carry on.
Rupert, I think Parag, you were doing.
Yeah. No, I mean, next
Okay.
slide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to reach is the same as Brahmatal. I will not repeat it in the interest of time, but there is information which is available easily on the net, and what are the day-wise destinations that you will be touching and covering. I'll leave it for later on, but this is fine. Only thing which we still need to check is that probably treks to Rupkund have been stopped. The reason we believe is that camping has been banned on the meadows, but this has to be checked. This is very recent information that we picked up while preparing for this webinar. Anupam, carry on. Next. So this is as we climb through the oak forests and the pine trees. Anupam is just standing above the tree line at about 10,000 feet. You can see the little flowers, the grass on the meadows. This is an awe-inspiring sight. You can't believe to see miles and miles, and it looks like an unending carpet of green. This is Ali Bugyal. You can see that we are now camping at Bedni Bugyal at 12,000 feet. The picture at the bottom is not to show about what we are eating, but also to talk about the dog that you can see on the bottom left. He's wearing a collar. The collar has got spikes. And the reason is that these mountains have leopards, and dogs are their favorite meal. So this is a way that the local people protect their dogs. Next. Our views, we are camping right next to the glacier. Again, something which you want to capture and hold forever in your minds. Amazing views. Next, Anupam. Heaven. What more do I need to say about this slide? Just take it in. I wish we had more time. Another slice of heaven, folks. And that's at 14,000 feet, just to remind you. First views of Trishul and Nanda Gunti as we're climbing. Our smiles, this is cold, this is 14,000 feet. I think now 15,000 if I'm correct, is Bhaguvasa, Anupam, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we just again more pictures, more images. The colors throughout the day they change. Next one. In the evening, the clouds gathered. There's another shot. Next one. So this is not to show Anupam's happy face. I think we've seen enough of it. This photograph is to tell you that just like we had the traffic jam on the Everest, we also face a traffic jam out here. You can see that the person at the beginning of the line is actually trying to break steps into a snow, a stream or something that has
Ice.
created a wall of ice, while snow that is turned to ice, so that we can climb it. That's the only way to go. So this was people waiting for the steps to be cut. Next. Now, we started early in the morning to make sure the snow was firm. 5 a.m. Imagine you're starting out in the dark with torches and people and your hearts in your mouth because you don't know what you're going to see. You heard so much about it. And then here we are, what about a 3 or 4 hour climb? We reached Rupkund Lake. So it's like a saucer. You have the lake at the bottom, not a very deep lake, about 6 feet deep, but something which you can see from the top with steep slopes. Next, Anupam, let's show them what it has. There. Did somebody crack a joke? The point is, this is real. Please take it in. Spooky, secretive. We don't know what caused this even today. There are enough theories around it, but about 500 skeletons, which actually people died on the top of the slopes, and as the weather changed, as the seasons changed, the snow would melt and the skeletons would keep slipping down the sides of the that saucer shaped gorge and slip into the lake. So there was a time when it was first discovered. And we'll move on to the next slide. when it was first discovered, there must have been around 500 skeletons there. Uh, there are legends and stories about what caused it. Most probably, tribes of people who were crossing and they got hit by hailstones. This is not a war as people expected, because this was discovered in 1942 by a forest ranger, and people thought that maybe this was the Japanese army trying to cross over into India, and they were killed. But no, this is of 820 AD is National Geographic's estimate. People died because hailstones the size of tennis balls hit them on the head, and the people from all age groups, children to old people. So that is how they estimated that this actually is probably a tribe of people who are crossing over from the pass, the Rupkund Pass. Next slide.
That's a chilling secret.
Yes, and just to tell you that after the high, after the the ascent to Rupkund Lake, we took the shortcut way down, and this was another thrill. I mean, this was amazing. You could just sit on your backside and slide down the snow. It was steep, it was slippery, and there were people waiting to catch hold of you down there. Next slide.
Parag and Anupam,
this is the last slide. This is the last slide.
A couple of minutes for questions. Yeah.
Yes, this is the last slide. This is a tribute to the people who accompanied us, who met our requirements better than a 5-star or 7-star service. I can tell you, somebody wanted yogurt, somebody wanted rajma. So this was all prepared at the village and taken up. Thank you to the gentlemen. Thank you to the people who take care of our safety and our lives. Hurry slowly. Himalayas are waiting. We are there to help and guide if anybody wants information, but we are going back again. Thank you everybody.
Absolutely beautiful. In fact, the messages that I'm getting as we are doing the webinar on how people are just waiting to travel back to the Himalayas, that itself shows us the spirit and the strength of human resilience, to come out of adversity. And I'm sure we shall have COVID behind us very soon, viewers. Well, somewhere between the bottom of the climb and the summit is the answer to the mystery of why we climb. Some questions that were coming in, that what kind of fitness levels are we looking for most of the treks, especially for a beginner? Which would be the first trek that a person should take to? Either of you can take that.
Anupam.
I wouldn't want to specifically say name a trek. If you just look on the web for easy category treks, anybody who can walk for an hour, and if you're a regular walker, and if you can walk for an hour comfortably, you can easily do a easy trek. So just look for easy treks, choose your season, choose your guide carefully, and go for it.
So talking about the guides part of it, viewers, I must share with you that in India, we have the Adventure Tour Operators Association of India. Look up their website. There are a lot of do's and don'ts that come in there. And it's India's premier association of adventure tourism. So it will give you a much more information if you're a beginner, or even if you're in the advanced, process of trekking. Stay close to nature, explore the charm of the geographical diversity of our incredible India. And also, apart from the treks that got mentioned today, Valley of Flowers, Hamta Pass, there's a Chadar trek. You can do it in winters in Ladakh. You can actually walk on ice. That's such an exciting trek to do on Zanskar. And then there's Goichala, Stoke Kangli. There are just so many treks to choose from. You just choose the one that works well for you. But also, Anupam, I would like to ask you that how to be a responsible trekker. Could we have a very quick take on that? We must not just take away from the nature, viewers. We need to take a balance with her. Anupam, your thoughts
Absolutely.
on how to be a responsible trekker?
Absolutely. So I think I mentioned that in the presentation also. Do not litter. Whatever you're bringing back from the cities, please take them back. We need to keep our nature pristine. Give back to the local economy. Do not disturb any animals or birds that you may actually find. Keep noise levels down. Don't think of it as a party place. Take in the nature, take in the noise and the, absorb the nature when you are in when you're in natural surroundings. Don't take the city noises with you. Leave them behind. So these are some of the things that you can, all do. Just be aware that you're in nature and respect nature, and she will treat you nicely as well.
One thing I'll add is that, in a lot of places that you go, there'll be local traditions, there'll be local practices where people might want their privacy respected. Don't take photos. Make sure that, if somebody tells you that, in fact, we did have a case where they told us not to go up a particular mountain, that is because of the local deity. You please respect that. I mean, these people, they live there, that's their home. So I would very strongly urge that be sensitive. Your guide will tell you what are the do's and don'ts. Please do not do anything different.
Yes, I think the need to respect the local people, the need to respect the local customs, and to respect nature. So as always, viewers, we are left short on time. There's always more to share. And so we are running, in fact, ahead of our scheduled time. And so I must thank Anupam and Parag. But viewers, I'm sure you observed through these slides that in India, trekking is not just for the men and not just a particular fitness level. You, me, everyone, women, children, everybody should join in enjoying the bounties of nature and learn how to, develop the respect for nature around us. And on another note, I want to thank our viewers. This was our 32nd webinar today, viewers. And we've sent a mail back to all of you. You've been great. You've been supporting us. Last Independence Day, 15th August 2019, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, had urged all of us that we must go and explore at least 15 places by 2022. We've already brought to you more than 30 odd places. I'm sure you're running out of time. Soon you wouldn't know where all to go. So pick your places, plan. As soon as COVID is a little more behind us, keep yourself safe and sound and healthy till then, but do start traveling as soon as you can and start viewing the beautiful, incredible India that we have. Next week, viewers, we are going to be sharing with you another amazing tradition of our country. It's our gift to the world, yoga. 21st June is the International Yoga Day, and that's probably one of the longest lasting gifts that we have to ourselves, coming all the way down from thousands of years. And it's our wealth and our wisdom. We'll be doing a few sessions, not just one session on yoga. So Tuesday, we're going to take a break because we're going to do 3 webinars back to back, 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st, perhaps also, because that's when the International Yoga Day is. So do not log in on Tuesday, but log in on the 18th of June, which is a Thursday at 11 a.m. to do some yoga and to become fit. And that's when you can go trekking for future. So thank you, Anupam. Thank you, Parag. Thank you, NEGD, for supporting us with 32 already done webinars. They are there as a repository on the Ministry of Tourism's website. Viewers, see them anytime. Look at your beautiful country. देखिए अपना देश, दिखाइए अपना देश और घूमिए अपने सुंदर अतुल्य भारत में. See you once again on the 18th of June, 11 a.m. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.